So, there's a saying that says that those who encounter imposter syndrome tend to be perfectionists because they tie their quality of work to their self worth. So, if that's you, stay and watch this video to learn some tips on how to deal with imposter syndrome. So, a little bit about me. My name is Indy. I'm known as Students by Indy on Instagram and TikTok. And I also run an Etsy shop that sells a variety of different stickers, pins, and keychains. And I feel like a lot of my imposter syndrome is coming from this art account. So, a little backstory is I took art lessons as a kid, but ever since then, I haven't really drawn that much. So, I feel like that is why I'm having a lot of imposter syndrome having this art account. But I feel like imposter syndrome comes in like different ways and different forms. It could come from like not feeling like you're allowed in a room or feeling like you got somewhere because of sheer luck. And it's also like feeling of self-doubt in your own work because you don't feel like you're skilled enough to do what you want to do. And it's the feeling of being a fraud at what you're supposed to be good at, and also the fear of someone finding out that you're not actually good at XYZ. So, how do we deal with imposter syndrome? So these are just like some tips that has helped me over the years. But the first one being you have to celebrate your wins, whether it's big or small. Because I think from like celebrating your wins, it helps with not feeling like you need validation from others, but rather than yourself. Because at the end of the day, imposter syndrome is from yourself, not from other people. It's also kind of the same thought process as someone saying like, hey, I'm proud of you for doing XYZ. But have you ever asked yourself like, hey, am I proud of myself? Because I feel like if you don't continue to say those things to yourself, like you're seeking validation from someone else, and that's not something that you can control, but you can control what you say to yourself. And so if someone doesn't like say I'm proud of you, then you're gonna feel like the work that you just did or put out is not good enough. And that's just something that like lowers your self-confidence and furthers your imposter syndrome. And another thing that I learned is that if it's not said out loud, it's not the truth. For example, if you believe in your head that your art is not good, but no one says it, like, is it actually bad? I feel like unless someone straight up tells you, hey, your art sucks, then you can reevaluate your art. But even then, like, art is so subjective that your art might not fit someone else's mold, but another person will love your art. There's a cup for everybody. So not to tell you to be delusional here, but as an artist, like with imposter syndrome, I think it's best to kind of just tell yourself that you're good enough as long as you keep trying. So you go out there and tell yourself that you're the best damn artist. And then kind of on the same line as like celebrating your wins, another tip that has helped me is writing down my successes and my wins throughout the year. It's just like very helpful to remind yourself that you did all this stuff, because I don't know about you, but even if I'm like at my full-time job, like I have such a hard time come review time to remember exactly what I did during the year. So what has helped me is every single month or week or when the event happens, like write down what you did, what you're proud of, and it could be big or small, but it's just a reminder of like everything that you've done. And when I relook at it at the end of the year, I remember like, oh yeah, I actually did that. Because when you're working little by little every day, you don't necessarily remember everything that you've done, because it's so refreshing to look back at everything that you've done this whole year and see how much you've actually accomplished. Okay, so my next tip is reframing the thought of feeling that you have to be a pro to belong in a room. I feel like there's always a lot of thoughts of not feeling like you're good enough and not feeling like you belong somewhere. But instead, you should really just think about your strengths and what you can bring to the table. I feel like as long as you know why you're doing what you're doing and staying consistent, you're only gonna go up from there. Like, I remember people like complimenting my artwork, and I would always feel so awkward and so embarrassed and cringy because I feel like it's not my best work. I always feel like I'm still a beginner even after like hundreds of sales. I've always had this feeling that like I'm not good enough to be like complimented on, because I feel like if I didn't go to art school and I didn't really take formal art lessons and learn how to draw formally, I'm less deserving to be called an artist. And I feel like I have to check like all of these boxes to feel legitimate. And honestly, that's like a ridiculous notion, because a chef will never be a chef unless they have went to culinary school and then they worked in an actual kitchen. And a designer will never be able to call themselves a designer if they haven't had a fashion show or a runway. And it's just so crazy to feel like we're not deserving of these titles because we are comparing ourselves to people who are top tier in their professions. And you don't have to be up here or a pro at something to be deserving of a title. I feel like there's so many times that I wanted to give up drawing because I feel like I wasn't good enough or I wasn't like a pro. Then I realized like I don't have to be a pro at every single thing that I do, but it shouldn't stop me from doing stuff that I love doing. Okay, so the next tip is regarding like whether you should focus on your future or the present, and how do you know if you made it? I feel like we're always like chasing goal after goal, thinking about what to do next, because there's always like that next thing to do. We're never like satisfied of what we've already accomplished. And I think that's why literally writing things down and documenting is such a crucial thing to do if you're dealing with imposter syndrome. Because like I said, like enough is never enough. And I think I may be bold in saying this, but I think no one out there, even if you're like up here, feels like they're enough. Like, you can be an artist in a museum, like for example, like you're in the Met Museum, but then you're like, oh, but I'm not in the Louvre Museum or something, and it's always gonna pile up. There's always gonna be something else that you're chasing. And I don't know when this like cycle will ever end. Maybe we will take it to the grave. But I think one thing that has helped me tackle this cycle of feeling like I'm never going to make it is really focusing on the right now rather than the future. Like, what can I do right now to improve myself? How can I grow right now? Like what steps can I take right now to improve, for example, my artistic abilities? Because at the end of the day, like that's really what I want to do. I just want to be a better artist. So what can I do right now instead of thinking like when I'm a professional artist, I want to be in this museum, and this museum. Because I think that's all you can really control. You can't control like the museum picking you, or you can't control your popularity or how many products you sell, you know? All you can really control is like your own thoughts and also your own craft. Okay, and then the last tip is to really just accept your success. And I know it's a silly thing to say, but it's also a very hard thing to do. For example, every time something good happens to me, like if I make a sale, I think one of the first thoughts that I have is like, do I deserve this? And the answer is 100%. For one, I'm not forcing anyone to purchase my products. They're willingly doing that themselves, so it's not something that, I'm telling them to do. And you also have to think about all the time and effort it took you to sell that product. And you have to like really think about it. you took all this time to draw up the product. You found someone and you worked with them consistently to produce the product. You took your own photos with a professional camera that you don't even know how to use, so you learned how to do that. And on top of that, you continue to practice drawing. So yes, 100%. Like, after all that work, you deserve that one sale. I think what we have to do better at when it comes to having imposter syndrome is to do a better job at like accepting our successes that come towards us rather than questioning it. That's all the tips that I have when it comes to dealing with imposter syndrome and those that have helped me. But let me know in the comments of any tips that has helped you that I haven't mentioned yet. But until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe for more videos like this.